Well, Sharon Moore made his first big splash with not Joe Cullen, who many people thought he was going to go after, the current defensive line coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, who, of course, will be coaching in the Super Bowl today. But Don Wink Martindale was hired as the defensive coordinator. That's a pretty big hire, honestly. I know there's some people that are hating on it. There's the Don Brown comparisons, which to me, they're just lazy. I think it's the people that have like the Mike Ditka gruff exterior, grumpy old man thing going on. He does look like kind of a tough son of a bitch, you know? Like you look at this old guy. Here's some things I like about Wink right off the bat, just in my preliminary research and what I already know about him. He started off as a high school coach. I kind of like that. I like when a guy was not gifted, an NFL job. He went from high school and worked his way all the way up to the premier positions that he's had. He's a Ravens guy, of course. We know that. He's been credited with creating at least a portion of the defense that our last two defensive coordinators run, Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter. So there's some overlap there to help with the transition. He's a linebacker guy, which to me is just kind of exciting, having a real strong linebacker guy there with Ernest Hausman and John Barham. And then you look at when he was the defensive coordinator for the Ravens, he was there for 4 years from 2018 to 2021. 2018, number 2 scoring defense in the NFL, number 1 in yards. 2019, number 3 scoring defense, number 4 yardage defense. So top 5, first 2 years. In 2020, number 2 scoring defense, number 7 yardage defense. So the guy's killing it. 3 years in a row, 3 amazing defenses in Baltimore. Now in 2021, they fell into the bottom half of the league. Apparently it was a mutual decision between him and John Harbaugh to part ways. I know Martindale expressed some interest at becoming a head coach or maybe doing some other things. And then John Harbaugh hired Mike McDonald from Michigan. So there's this big kind of incestuous circle that's going on here. And then when Wink went to the Giants and the last 2 years he's been a coach, he had a pretty terrible defense. There's really no way around it. They were ranked in the bottom half of the NFL. They were especially gruesome this past season. So interpret that how you want. I interpret that the Giants were just kind of a dysfunctional coaching staff with Brian Dabble over there. I don't think that he was set up for success. This is a guy that's clearly a good defensive mind and a good defensive coach. So I like the hire.
Yeah, I also like the hire, Mike. I at first was a little hesitant, because you hear the Don Brown comparisons and what have you. But if you really dig a little bit deeper into this thing, I think it's not quite as simple as some are making it out to be when you're making that kind of comparison. I mean, you've already cited, some great numbers, and there's really 3 primary things that Wink didn't have working in his favor as far as trying to land another NFL job, right? And one of those is age. He's getting older. The NFL is definitely a place where, they're looking for younger, hungry, fast coaches, that are just of that general age group that aren't quite as old as Wink, so he had that going against him. Another is reputation for just being kind of strong in his belief system. You've already mentioned differences with Brian Dabble, and there was that issue where apparently he cussed him out for firing a linebackers coach, so he also has that working against him. And then the third, in my opinion, is really just the tenure with the Giants. If you go back into this thing, into his history with the Baltimore Ravens and what he was able to do with that franchise, there really isn't a gruesome ending to that saga, right? So, you can't really find too many negative scratches against him whenever you're digging up, numbers and record in Baltimore and things like that. The Giants were just a dumpster fire, right? They suffered from a lot of injuries, and that defense, for how well that they were able to perform under Martindale was really never able to even scratch the surface just because they were being heavily overworked by the offense's lack of production, lack of ability to attain first downs, things like that, you know? So you honestly can't look at Wink in a microscope just for his previous 2 years with the New York Giants when this guy's had so much success doing what he's able to do and really only one example of negative success, you know? So I think this is a hire that Michigan fans, those that aren't, really just need to give a chance and get behind and see what he's able to do. You know, I think that he's really an intelligent guy. If you listen to a lot of his clips, if you listen to a lot of his post-game interviews, the guy knows what he's talking about. Obviously, is the architect, you know, is kind of the way that it's being phrased online of the McDonald Minter defensive tree, you know what I mean? So give this guy a chance. Let's see what he's able to do with Michigan's defensive playmakers, which, like, there's no shortage of those on the playing field. So I think these are all things that you have to take into account and think that there might be some good things that this guy can do within this defense.
Well, there's no shortage of good players on the defense right now. I think, and we'll talk about this in coming weeks, we want to make sure that that stays the case, right? Some of these coaches leaving begs the question, are we going to lose any of these guys? It feels like Sharon Moore has a good approach and a good connection with the team right now. Not to mention they just won a natty, and so I think a lot of people are feeling good in Ann Arbor. But you know, this last second Clink turnaround move, it makes me a little bit nervous about not just that secondary, but everybody on the defense. And so there's a lot of questions about like what happened. It was being reported kind of under the table that Clink was going to stay. I mean, a lot of people were tweeting out, you know, Wink and Clink memes, and I was one of them. I was coming up with, I was ready for the new turnover celebration, the Wink and Clink drink, where after every turnover that they just ran over there and somebody, you know, shotgunned a beer or something. We're still working out the details, but we will never know what Wink
R.I.P.
and
Wink
Clink.
and Clink.
Yeah, we will never know what Wink and Clink would have been. But I think that actually Wink might be the reason that Clink didn't stick around. And here's what I mean by this. So Steve Clinkscale was the co-defensive coordinator. That was his title last year. I think some of us forget that he was, or am I wrong about that, Matt? I feel like he had like a title
He
in
was.
there
He was the
somewhere, right?
co-defensive coordinator.
Right, but we all just kind of knew it was Jesse Minter, right? Okay. I wanted to make sure I wasn't wrong about that. So I think that Clink was feeling that he would either retain that title or even better, become the sole defensive coordinator. I think he was willing to not be the sole defensive coordinator, but Wink Martindale was not going to come from the NFL, you know, with his name, his experience, his prestige, and come be a co-defensive coordinator in college. That's just my theory, right? That's just my theory. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not an ego thing, but my bet was that Wink Martindale was coming, and the agreement was he's going to be defensive coordinator, period. And then Clink realized, I'm going to have to take a step back. And I think that's when he said, you know what? Let me give old Jim Harbaugh a call and see if that offer's still on the table. And so that's my theory. I have I don't know anything about it, but I started to look at the pieces of the puzzle and I was like, you know what? I bet Wink just didn't want to be a co-defensive coordinator. And I bet Clink, didn't want to just be a secondary coach.